Good evening, and welcome to the Midnight Museum. Tonight, we journey back over 4,500 years to the golden sands of ancient Egypt, where one of humanity's most magnificent achievements rises from the desert floor. Let your mind drift with me now, as we explore the Great Pyramid of Giza, a monument to human ambition and ancient mystery. Close your eyes if you wish, and imagine standing on the Giza Plateau, the sun setting slowly behind you, casting long shadows across the sand. Before you rises the Great Pyramid, so vast that at first your mind struggles to comprehend its scale. This ancient wonder stands 481 feet tall, or 146 meters, though time has worn away about 30 feet from its peak. Even diminished, it remains a giant, a mountain built by human hands. For nearly 4,000 years, this pyramid held the title of the tallest man-made structure on Earth. Imagine that. 40 centuries of supremacy, until medieval cathedrals finally surpassed it in height. But height is only the beginning of this story. The pyramid rests on a base that covers an area of 13 acres, nearly the size of 7 city blocks. Each side of this massive square base measures approximately 756 feet, or 230 meters. What makes this even more remarkable is the precision with which it was built. The 4 sides are aligned almost perfectly with the cardinal directions: north, south, east, and west. The accuracy is astounding, with an error of only about 1/15 of a single degree. Ancient engineers achieved this without compasses, without modern instruments, using only the stars, the sun, and their profound understanding of the heavens. Let your breathing slow now, as we consider what it took to build such a monument. The Great Pyramid is composed of approximately 2.3 million individual blocks of stone. 2.3 million, each one cut, transported, and carefully positioned. Most of these blocks weigh between 2.5 and 15 tons, though some of the granite blocks in the King's Chamber weigh as much as 80 tons. Try to picture it: a single stone, heavier than 50 automobiles, somehow lifted and placed with perfect precision, high above the ground. The pyramid was built for Pharaoh Khufu, known to the Greeks as Cheops, the second ruler of Egypt's 4th dynasty. Construction began around 2580 BCE, during what historians call the Old Kingdom period, a golden age of pyramid building. For Khufu, this wasn't merely a tomb. It was a gateway to eternity, a stairway to the stars, where his soul would ascend to join the gods. Breathe deeply and imagine the desert 4,500 years ago. The pyramid wasn't always the weathered, sandy brown we see today. When it was completed, the Great Pyramid was covered entirely in polished white limestone casing stones. These stones were cut so precisely that the joints between them were nearly invisible. The surfaces were polished until they gleamed, reflecting the intense Egyptian sun like a beacon, like a mountain of light rising from the desert. Ancient writers described how the pyramid blazed like a jewel, visible for miles across the flat landscape, a radiant symbol of pharaonic power and divine connection. Most of these beautiful casing stones were removed centuries later, stripped away in the Middle Ages to build other structures in Cairo. But a few still remain near the base, silent witnesses to the pyramid's former glory, hints of the magnificence that once was. Let yourself drift now, as we consider the human story behind this stone giant. For many years, People believed that slaves built the pyramids, forced to labor under the whip. But archaeological evidence tells a different story. The pyramid was built by skilled workers, thousands of them, perhaps as many as 100,000 at the project's peak. These weren't slaves, but paid laborers, many of them farmers who worked on the pyramid during the annual flooding of the Nile, when their fields lay underwater and they couldn't farm. These workers lived in nearby villages. Archaeologists have found their settlements, their bakeries, their breweries. They were fed well, with bread and beer and meat, far better than the average Egyptian of that time. They worked in rotating shifts, perhaps 3 months at a time, before returning home to their families. In a way, building the pyramid was a sacred duty, a way to serve their god-king, and to participate in something eternal. The entire construction is estimated to have taken approximately 20 years, though some scholars suggest it might have been even longer. 20 years of continuous work, of planning and precision, of human cooperation on a scale rarely seen in history. Generation after generation of workers, fathers and sons, laboring together on this monument to eternity. Rest your mind for a moment. Let these images settle. The white gleaming pyramid, the thousands of workers, the golden Egyptian sun beating down on the endless desert. And we'll continue our journey deeper into the mysteries of this ancient wonder. As you rest, let us venture inside this ancient structure through passages that have remained dark and silent for millennia. The entrance to the Great Pyramid, the one used by visitors today, is not the original entrance. The true original entrance lies higher up, on the north face of the pyramid, about 55 feet above ground level. It was hidden, concealed behind the smooth casing stones, invisible to anyone who didn't know exactly where to look. This was intentional, a way to protect the pharaoh's eternal resting place from those who would disturb it. But the pyramid was indeed opened, not in modern times, but over 1,000 years ago. In the year 820 CE, Caliph al-Ma'mun of Baghdad led an expedition to force their way inside. His workers tunneled through the solid limestone, creating the passage that tourists use today. They worked for months, chiseling through the dense stone, searching for the legendary treasures they believed lay within. Eventually, they broke through into the pyramid's internal passages, but the treasures they hoped to find had long since vanished. Take a slow breath and imagine following these ancient corridors. The internal structure of the pyramid is far more complex than you might imagine. There are 3 main chambers inside, each serving a different purpose, or perhaps reflecting changes in the pharaoh's plans as construction progressed. The first chamber lies deep beneath the pyramid, carved into the bedrock below. It remains unfinished, rough and incomplete, as if work suddenly stopped. Some scholars believe this was the original burial chamber, later abandoned in favor of something more grand. Above this subterranean chamber, halfway up the pyramid's height, lies the Queen's Chamber. Despite its name, this chamber was never intended for a queen. The name comes from later Arab explorers who followed a tradition of peaked ceilings in women's tombs. The Queen's Chamber measures about 17 feet by 19 feet, with a corbelled ceiling that rises to a point. It too appears unfinished, its floor still rough, never smoothed or polished. 2 narrow shafts extend from the chamber's walls, running through the pyramid's mass, though they don't reach the outer surface. Their purpose remains, one of the pyramid's quiet mysteries. Let your mind climb higher now, up the grand gallery. This is perhaps the most breathtaking space within the pyramid, a corridor that rises at a 26-degree angle for 153 feet. The grand gallery is nearly 28 feet tall, with walls that corbel inward as they rise, creating a ceiling that seems to soar above you. Walking through it must have felt like ascending through a cathedral made of stone, each step bringing you closer to the divine. The floor is polished smooth, worn by the footsteps of workers, and later, by curious explorers across the centuries. At the top of the grand gallery lies the king's chamber, the heart of the pyramid. This chamber measures approximately 34 feet long, 17 feet wide, and 19 feet high. Its walls are made entirely of red granite quarried from Aswan, over 500 miles to the south. Imagine the logistics, transporting these massive granite blocks by boat along the Nile, then dragging them up the pyramid's internal passages. The precision of the work is remarkable. The granite blocks fit together so tightly that you cannot slip a piece of paper between them. Inside the king's chamber rests a large granite sarcophagus. It sits empty now, has been empty since Al-Ma'mun's workers first entered. The sarcophagus is too large to have been brought through the passages, which means it must have been placed in the chamber during the pyramid's construction, before the roof was sealed. It was carved from a single block of granite, hollowed out with incredible precision. When struck, it rings like a bell, a clear, resonant tone that echoes through the chamber. Above the king's chamber, invisible to those who stand within it, are 5 relieving chambers. These chambers were built to distribute the enormous weight of the stone above, preventing the king's chamber from being crushed. The top relieving chamber has a pointed roof made of massive limestone blocks, each weighing up to 40 tons. This ingenious design has worked perfectly for over 4,500 years. The king's chamber remains intact, while the weight of hundreds of thousands of tons presses down from above. Breathe slowly now, and picture the darkness inside these chambers, the weight of history pressing down, the silence that has lasted for millennia. These passages, these rooms carved from living rock, were meant to last forever, and they have standing as testament to human ambition and the eternal dream of conquering death itself. Rest your thoughts here, among these ancient stones, and let the story continue to unfold gently, like the slow passage of time across the desert. Let us step outside now, back into the desert air, where the pyramid stands beneath the stars. The ancient Egyptians called this monument Akhet Khufu, meaning the horizon of Khufu. To them, it was more than a tomb. It was a place where earth met sky, where the mortal and divine intersected. The very shape of the pyramid, with its 4 triangular sides rising to a point, was deeply symbolic, representing the rays of the sun descending from heaven to earth. At the pyramid's apex, there once sat a capstone, called a pyramid ion. This special stone, likely covered in gold or electrum, a mixture of gold and silver, would have caught the first rays of dawn and the last light of sunset, blazing like a beacon across the desert. The pyramid ion is lost now, vanished into history, but its significance remains. It was the final piece placed on the pyramid, a ceremonial moment, marking the completion of years of labor and the sealing of the pharaoh's eternal home. Breathe softly and consider the mathematical precision embedded in this structure. The ratio of the pyramid's perimeter to its height is remarkably close to 2 times pi. Whether this was intentional or a happy coincidence remains debated, but it suggests that the ancient builders possessed sophisticated mathematical knowledge. They understood geometry, ratios, and proportions in ways that continue to impress modern engineers. The pyramid's sides are slightly concave, curving inward ever so gently. This concavity is so subtle that it wasn't even noticed until aerial photography revealed it in modern times. Each face has a slight indentation, running from base to apex, creating not 4 sides, but 8. Why the builders did this remains uncertain. Perhaps it was to prevent the casing stones from sliding, or perhaps it held some symbolic meaning we have yet to understand. Let your mind wander back to the construction site, where an ingenious system of ramps must have existed. No one knows for certain what these ramps looked like, whether they spiraled around the pyramid or ran straight up one side, or perhaps wrapped around the structure internally. What we do know is that without ramps, there would be no pyramid. These temporary structures, built of mud, brick, and rubble, would have grown as the pyramid grew, rising higher and higher, and then, when the work was complete, dismantled and swept away, leaving no trace. The workers who built the pyramid left their marks in unexpected ways. On some of the massive granite blocks inside the relieving chambers above the king's chamber, archaeologists have found ancient graffiti. Workers inscribed the names of their crews with names like Friends of Khufu or Drunkards of Menkaure. These casual marks, painted in red ochre, are among the only written evidence we have that links the pyramid directly to Khufu's reign. They are also remarkably human, reminding us that real people with personalities and humor built this eternal monument. The quarrying of stone for the pyramid was itself an enormous undertaking. Most of the limestone blocks came from quarries located right on the Giza plateau, just south of the pyramid. Workers could see their work site from where they labored. But the fine white casing stones came from Tura, across the Nile, about 13 miles away. And the red granite for the king's chamber and the relieving chambers traveled 500 miles from Aswan in the south. The logistics of this supply chain, coordinating thousands of workers across vast distances, speaks to a highly organized society with sophisticated management systems. Rest for a moment and picture the tools these workers used. They had no iron, no steel, no explosives. They worked with copper tools, bronze tools, wooden sledges, and stone hammers. To cut the hard granite, they may have used dolerite pounders, balls of dense stone that could fracture granite through repeated pounding. They also used copper saws with sand as an abrasive, slowly grinding through stone. It was patient work, methodical, requiring incredible skill and determination. The pyramid complex was much larger than just the pyramid itself. Surrounding the Great Pyramid, there was once a vast mortuary temple on the eastern side, connected by a long causeway to a valley temple near the Nile. These temples, now mostly ruined, were where priests performed rituals to sustain the pharaoh's spirit in the afterlife. The causeway, covered and lined with carved reliefs, stretched for about 800 meters. Imagine it, a sacred road leading from the living world by the Nile up to the realm of eternity at the pyramid's base. Around the Great Pyramid, 3 smaller pyramids stand. These are known as the Queen's Pyramids, built for Khufu's wives and important female relatives. Each is about 1/5 the size of the Great Pyramid, but built with the same precision and care. They too had their own small temples, their own causeways, their own eternal purposes. The queens, like the pharaoh, were preparing for their journey to the afterlife, though their monuments were necessarily smaller, reflecting the hierarchy of ancient Egyptian society. Breathe deeply now, and let your thoughts drift to the boat pits. On the southern side of the Great Pyramid, archaeologists discovered 5 large pits carved into the bedrock. In 1954, one of these pits was opened, and inside lay a disassembled cedarwood boat, perfectly preserved for 4,500 years. This solar boat, or royal barge, was 143 feet long, made of 1,224 pieces of wood, fitted together with remarkable precision. It may have been used to transport Khufu's body to his pyramid during his funeral, or it may have been purely symbolic, a vessel for his soul to sail across the heavens, accompanying the sun god Ra on his daily journey. The pyramid was part of a necropolis, a city of the dead. Surrounding it, hundreds of mastaba tombs, rectangular structures with flat roofs, housed nobles, officials, and members of the royal family. These mastabas were arranged in neat rows, like streets in a city, creating organized cemeteries on both the east and west sides of the pyramid. Being buried near the pharaoh was a great honor, ensuring that in death, as in life, one remained close to divine power. The total weight of the Great Pyramid is estimated at approximately 6.5 million tons. 6.5 million tons of stone, lifted, placed, and secured, with only human muscle, animal power, and ingenious engineering. To put this in perspective, that's roughly the weight of 900 Eiffel Towers or 16 Empire State Buildings. The scale defies easy comprehension, which is perhaps why, for thousands of years, people have wondered and speculated about how it was really done. The ancient Greek historian Herodotus visited Egypt around 450 BCE, over 2,000 years after the pyramid was built. He spoke with Egyptian priests and recorded what they told him. According to his account, 100,000 men worked on the pyramid in 3-month shifts. He also mentioned machines used to lift the stones from one level to the next, though he didn't describe what these machines looked like. His writings, while sometimes questioned, remain one of our oldest sources for how the ancient world understood these monuments. The pyramid's internal temperature remains constant at around 68 degrees Fahrenheit or 20 degrees Celsius, regardless of the temperature outside. This natural climate control results from the pyramid's massive thermal mass and careful design. The ancient builders may not have understood thermodynamics in modern terms, but they clearly knew how to create a stable environment protected from the desert's extreme heat and cold. Let yourself relax more deeply as we consider the astronomical alignments. The 4 shafts, 2 from the king's chamber and 2 from the queen's chamber, point toward specific stars and constellations. The southern shaft from the king's chamber aligned with Orion's belt in ancient times, which the Egyptians associated with Osiris, god of the afterlife. The northern shaft pointed toward the circumpolar stars, the stars that never set, symbolizing eternal life. These shafts weren't just ventilation. They were cosmic pathways, channels for the pharaoh's soul to ascend to the stars. The precision of the pyramid's construction extends to its leveling. The base of the pyramid is leveled to within just 2.1 centimeters, less than an inch across its entire 13-acre area. Achieving this on ancient bedrock, before modern surveying equipment, required sophisticated techniques. The builders likely used water-filled trenches, allowing them to create a perfectly level reference plane from which all measurements could be taken. Patience, skill, and an unwavering commitment to perfection. Some of the mysteries of the pyramid remain unsolved to this day. In 2017, scientists using cosmic ray muon detectors discovered a large void, a previously unknown chamber, deep within the pyramid structure. This void, about 100 feet long, lies above the Grand Gallery. Its purpose is unknown. Perhaps it's another relieving chamber, or perhaps it's a hidden room waiting to reveal new secrets. The pyramid, even after thousands of years of study, continues to hold surprises. The pyramid has survived earthquakes, sandstorms, and the passage of countless centuries. While its outer casing has been stripped away and its apex has crumbled, the core structure remains remarkably intact. This durability wasn't accidental. The ancient engineers built the pyramid with a slight inward slope, each layer of stones leaning slightly toward the center. This design makes the structure incredibly stable, allowing it to withstand forces that would topple a straight-walled building. They were building for eternity, and they very nearly succeeded. Breathe slowly in and out. Let these images settle in your mind. The workers leaving their marks, the boats waiting in darkness, the stars aligning with sacred shafts. All of it part of a story that stretches across millennia, connecting ancient hands to our own time through stone and silence and the endless desert night. Rest now as our journey continues, gently into deeper mysteries. As night deepens over the desert, let us consider the pyramid's place in the vast tapestry of ancient Egyptian belief. To understand the Great Pyramid, we must understand the Egyptian view of death, which was not an ending, but a transformation. Death was a doorway through which the soul passed into the field of reeds, a paradise that mirrored the beauty of the Nile Valley, but lasted forever. The ancient Egyptians believed that each person possessed multiple souls. The Ka was one's life force, a spiritual double that needed sustenance. The Ba was the personality, often depicted as a bird with a human head, free to move between the worlds of the living and the dead. And the Ark was the transformed spirit that achieved immortality. The pyramid served all these aspects of the soul, providing a body for the Ka, a launching point for the Ba, and a transformation chamber for the Ark. Interestingly, no mummy of Khufu has ever been found. The sarcophagus in the king's chamber has always been empty, at least in recorded history. Was the pyramid robbed in ancient times, the pharaoh's body stolen or destroyed? Or was Khufu, perhaps, never buried there at all? Some scholars suggest that the true burial chamber may still lie hidden in some undiscovered space within the massive structure. The pyramid keeps its deepest secrets. Let your breathing slow as we explore the pyramid's outer surface more closely. When the white limestone casing was intact, the pyramid's sides were so smooth that climbing them would have been nearly impossible. Ancient visitors reported that the surface was so polished you could see your reflection in it. This wasn't just for beauty, though beauty was certainly part of it. The smooth surface had ritual significance, representing purity, and the primordial mound that rose from the waters of chaos at the creation of the world. The pyramid was once surrounded by a boundary wall made of limestone, standing about 33 feet tall. This wall created a sacred precinct, separating the pyramid complex from the mundane world beyond. Only priests and those participating in royal rituals would have been allowed inside. For ordinary Egyptians, the pyramid would have been visible, gleaming white against the blue sky, but eternally out of reach, a divine mystery on the horizon. The Valley Temple, at the base of the causeway near the Nile, was the first stop in the pharaoh's funeral journey. Here, the body would have been received, brought by boat across the Nile. The temple was built of massive limestone blocks, with walls lined in red granite. Inside, 23 statues of Khufu stood in the dim light, each one a representation of the divine king. The Valley Temple connected the pyramid to the Nile, to the agricultural lands, to the realm of the living, creating a bridge between worlds. Relax deeper now and picture the causeway, that grand covered corridor. It was approximately 2,600 feet long, rising gradually from the Valley Temple to the mortuary temple at the pyramid's base. The walls were decorated with carved reliefs, showing scenes of the king's life, his victories, his offerings to the gods. Light filtered in through narrow slits in the roof, creating a mysterious, almost otherworldly atmosphere. To walk this causeway during a royal funeral must have felt like walking between earth and heaven. The mortuary temple, on the pyramid's eastern side, was where daily rituals were performed. Priests brought offerings of food, beer, incense, and performed ceremonies to sustain the pharaoh's spirit. These weren't symbolic offerings in the Egyptian mind. The Ka of Khufu truly consumed the spiritual essence of these gifts. The temple had an open courtyard, columned halls, storage chambers for ritual equipment, and a sanctuary, the holiest space, where the pharaoh's spirit could receive worship. The cost of building the Great Pyramid, in ancient terms, is almost impossible to calculate. Beyond the direct costs, there was the social cost. Thousands of workers were diverted from agricultural production, from other construction projects, from military service. The resources consumed limestone, granite, copper, timber, food to feed the workers, beer to sustain them. All of this represented a massive investment by what was then one of the world's most powerful civilizations. Building the pyramid was a statement that Egypt's wealth and organization were without equal. Let yourself drift as we consider what sustained this enormous effort. Part of it was religious devotion, certainly. The pharaoh was considered a god, or at least the son of the gods. To serve him, even in death, was to serve the divine order of the universe, what the Egyptians called Ma'at. But there was also a practical side. Workers were paid, fed well, given medical care. Their villages have been excavated, revealing bakeries that could produce thousands of loaves daily, breweries, fish processing areas. The Pyramid Project was also an economic engine that employed and fed tens of thousands. The pyramid's influence extended far beyond its own time. When the ancient Greeks drew up their list of 7 wonders of the ancient world, the Great Pyramid was included. And unlike the Hanging Gardens, the Colossus of Rhodes, the Lighthouse of Alexandria, all now vanished, the Great Pyramid alone survives. It is the oldest of the 7 wonders, and the only one still standing. For over 2,000 years, it has held this distinction, a survivor, when all others have fallen to time. Arab scholars in the medieval period were fascinated by the pyramid. They measured it, tried to understand its purpose, and wrote extensively about it. The mathematician and astronomer Al-Biruni calculated the pyramid's height with remarkable accuracy using geometric principles. Other scholars speculated that the pyramid contained hidden treasures, or ancient wisdom, or perhaps was built by a race of giants. These medieval accounts, while sometimes fantastical, kept knowledge of the pyramid alive in an era when Europe had largely forgotten ancient Egypt. Breathe gently now and consider the pyramid's acoustic properties. Inside the king's chamber, sounds behave in unusual ways. The granite walls reflect sound waves, creating resonances at certain frequencies. When the empty sarcophagus is struck, it produces a clear tone that reverberates through the chamber. Some researchers believe this acoustic environment was intentional, perhaps used in religious rituals or funerary ceremonies. The ancient Egyptians had deep knowledge of sound and vibration, using them in temple ceremonies throughout their civilization. The question of how the massive granite beams were placed in the king's chamber ceiling continues to puzzle engineers. These beams, each weighing between 25 and 80 tons, span the chamber's width, about 17 feet. They were positioned with perfect precision, with gaps between them of less than a millimeter in some places. Lifting these beams to a height of over 140 feet inside the pyramid, then maneuvering them into position, required extraordinary skill and engineering methods that we can only guess at today. The descending passage that leads down into the subterranean chamber runs at an angle of 26 degrees for 345 feet. It's carved through solid limestone, with walls so straight and smooth that the precision is visible even today. This passage, like so much of the pyramid, demonstrates an obsessive attention to detail. The ancient builders could have made it rough, functional, but crude. Instead, they made it perfect, even though, for most of history, almost no one would ever see it. This speaks to a deeper philosophy that the quality of the work mattered as much as the work itself. Let your mind rest as we think about the pyramid's symbolic geometry. The square base represents the 4 cardinal directions, the stability of Earth. The 4 triangular faces, rising to meet at a point, represent ascension, the journey from Earth to sky, from mortality to divinity. The apex, where all lines converge, symbolizes unity with the sun god Ra, the ultimate destination of the pharaoh's soul. Every element had meaning, multiple layers of meaning, physical, spiritual, cosmic. Nay, by the Great Pyramid stand two other large pyramids. The Pyramid of Khafra, built by Khufu's son, appears taller than the Great Pyramid from some angles because it stands on higher ground. But it's actually about 10 feet shorter. At its peak, it still retains some of its original casing stones, giving us a glimpse of what all three pyramids once looked like. And the Pyramid of Menko, the smallest of the three, still stands about 213 feet tall. Together, these three pyramids form the iconic image of Giza, silhouetted against the desert sky. The Great Sphinx lies near the Valley Temple, facing east toward the rising sun. Carved from a single outcrop of limestone, it has the body of a lion and the head of a pharaoh, probably Khafra. The Sphinx is even older than some thought, showing signs of water erosion from a time when the region had more rainfall. It guards the Giza necropolis, a sentinel watching over the eternal sleep of the pharaohs, as it has for millennia upon millennia. The pyramid appears in ancient Egyptian texts, though not as often as we might expect. The pyramid texts, the oldest religious texts in the world, were carved inside later pyramids, but not in the Great Pyramid's chambers. These texts describe the pharaoh's journey through the afterlife, the spells and incantations needed to navigate the dangers and achieve immortality. While not inscribed in Khufu's pyramid, their content helps us understand what the pyramid represented, a launching pad for the soul's celestial voyage. Modern technology continues to reveal new details. Ground-penetrating radar, thermal imaging, cosmic ray detectors, all have been used to study the pyramid. These tools have revealed anomalies, temperature variations in the stones, possible hidden chambers, spaces yet unexplored. Each discovery raises new questions. The pyramid, after thousands of years, hasn't finished teaching us. It remains a puzzle, inviting us to look deeper, to wonder, to imagine. The workers who built the pyramid were organized into large crews, perhaps 20,000 to 30,000 permanent workers, with many more temporary laborists during peak construction seasons. These crews were divided into smaller gangs, with names that reflected pride in their work. They competed with each other, leaving inscriptions boasting of their achievements. This wasn't slave labor, but a national project that united Egypt in a common purpose. The pyramid, in this sense, was as much about building a nation as it was about building a tomb. Close your eyes and rest in the silence, imagining the pyramid under starlight, the desert wind whispering across ancient stone, the weight of centuries pressing down, yet the structure enduring, patient, eternal, waiting as it has always waited, holding its mysteries close, while the world turns and changes and forgets and remembers, and still the pyramid stands. Let these thoughts settle like sand slowly drifting as we journey onward through the endless night.